Hello and welcome to the Soul's Conquest in conversation with Eric. I am so excited to have you. The last time I think we had a recording session that we had planned, and there was like a huge thunderstorm here, and I had to cancel it because there was literally no electricity. But here we are today, so super excited to share your journey with my listeners. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yes, thank you, Maddie, for having me today. And I'm glad we were able to connect. My name is Eric Moore, and I consider myself a communication designer.
Yeah.
I help people converse, communicate better in order to either solve business problems or get over creative struggles.
Mhm.
And it's something that I'm very passionate about, and I'm glad to be here to share it with everybody.
That is so beautiful. I want to ask you, can you share your craft? Like, what do you create? And you can link this to your previous answer so that we have some sort of a connection. And yeah,
Yeah, well, I create a lot of stuff, but the thing that helps me have a house and take care of my children and my family is working with teams in corporations who
hmm,
struggle to communicate both with themselves and their leaders.
yeah,
And the creation component within that usually falls from anywhere with a simple email, like a
hmm,
newsletter, to something that you might hear of as a pitch deck. Um,
yeah,
presentation to say, listen, leaders, I need money for my team in order to solve a problem.
yeah, yeah. So, would it be appropriate for me to say that in a way you create these bridges that enable the communication that happens between two teams and two people? Would that be right for me to say, or would you like to kind of reframe that in something that fits more into your view?
No, I think bridge is a good visual.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I also think of the foundation under the bridge. There's a lot of just coaching
Mm-hmm.
and sitting with people and just listening in order to understand where their communication style is working and where it may have challenges. So to me, the bridge is actually a wonderful metaphor, but it's also the foundation underneath it um,
Yeah,
that I tend to focus on more than just the bridge itself.
right. That makes a lot of sense, and it's quite interesting that you are doing this because I have seen a lot of companies. I have worked with a lot of companies where the communication is so bad that it creates this toxic environment. I believe where people are just not listening to each other because there are
Mhm.
gaps in the communication, and you're not only building the bridge but also the foundation for it. So why do you create these bridges and the foundations? Like, why this in particular?
Uh, yeah, I knew you were going to ask me that one. I, the soul coach is asking me to soul search. Um, it it goes back to a little bit of my origin story, which is I grew up in a big family where lots of conversations were had and there were lots of communication breakdowns. And as a child, not being able to converse freely with the adults, I was able to observe where the communication was breaking down. I
Mhm.
didn't have the language to describe what I was seeing, but I think that's what started is I wanted to help my family solve their communication problems.
Yeah.
But spoiler alert, don't try to solve your family's communication problem
Yeah.
because you might get into more of a fight. But I think that's the spark. That's where it started for me is
Mhm.
what can I do to help fix these relationships that I care about?
Yeah, and that is so powerful, right? Like, what you do is kind of fueled by your past, your origin story, which I was going to ask you about, like your journey and how it started. But before we go into that, I just want to remark on how powerful it is to start it from something that beautiful and that powerful. So yeah, tell me a little bit more about your journey. Like, you say that it started from there, but how did you get into the creative space and the communicative space? And because I know you do design thinking as well, so if you could elaborate a bit more on that, that would be awesome to hear.
Yeah, I think I would originally identify as a child as a creative, as an artist, and I had help.
Mm-hmm.
A number of my family members are artists. One of my biggest role models is my aunt,
Mm-hmm.
who's an architect,
Wow.
and so I learned the discipline of sticking to um, the creative side.
Mm-hmm.
You know, mathematically, regimen, just
Mm-hmm.
keep at it. My
Yeah.
uncle is a painter, an
Mm-hmm.
illustrator, and
Yeah.
does wonderful work. And so a lot of that familial influence bled into me. But I didn't necessarily want to be an architect or a painter, so I didn't know where I was going
Mm-hmm.
until one day my grandmother brought home a computer, and
Yeah.
from there I saw the ability to create digital art. And my first discovery was actually making typography on the
Ooh.
computer. So
Wow.
making a whole set of letters and turning
Yeah.
the pixels and twisting them and making them look like garbled messes. But that's where my journey began as a creative, is those two components in my family, and then of course the computer has helped me in that way.
Wow. That was beautiful, seriously. And I want you to talk a bit more about these influences in your family and how important they were in your growth, like not only in the beginning, but also during the journey. If you're comfortable with sharing that, I'd love to know how much it affected your creative journey.
It affected it uh, tremendously, because I was able to see someone like my aunt, who was a woman at a time who was facing some adversity in the
Mm-hmm.
architectural world, which is, it was viewed as more of a male dominant world. And she was able to go into that, not sort of as brutishly or with force. Her work spoke for itself. And I felt
Mm-hmm.
that the confidence that she had within presenting her work is what led me to be a little bit more confident about my work.
Yeah.
And so that expression of her confidence is what has really affected or inspired me to keep going in the creative space. My
Mm-hmm.
uncle, on the other hand, he's more of a free spirit. He would went off to Central America and taught English
Wow.
to a Spanish speaking country,
Mm-hmm.
and went off the grid, as they say.
Yeah.
Um, we might have traditionally called him a hippie.
Yeah.
Um, but I think it was that healthy blend of those two personalities, one who's very disciplined and confident, and one who's a little more free spirited, has really, I think, has landed me in a nice center
Yeah.
balance of my creative work.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And before we go further, I want you guys, because I did mention design thinking. So if you could just explain to the listeners what it means and what you're doing right now in that particular aspect of your journey, it would be awesome to know that.
Yeah, so design thinking is really just a method. It's a series of methods to solve really difficult problems or
Mm-hmm.
interesting problems or creative problems. Um, and it landed in my life about 10 years ago.
Wow.
And at that time, I was a product manager for a piece of software. And I won't
Yeah.
go too much into detail there. But what I was learning in that early instance, 2010, was that people were struggling with the software,
Yeah.
and they were struggling to communicate what exactly was the problem. But I was able to see that, and I was able to use the tools in design thinking to help,
Mm-hmm.
um, get to that point. Bear with me just a moment.
Yes.
Excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
And so design thinking has a number of research methods built into it that are called ethnographic research. And really all that
Wow.
is just a fancy word for saying writing about people. You're
Yeah.
observing people, and really the power in design thinking is empathy.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is something that tapped into what I was viewing in my childhood, which is I empathy was that right word for what I was doing when I was observing my family communicating and not communicating correctly,
Yeah.
and hearing these customers not being able to communicate correctly. Is just, if I were able to listen and repeat back what I was hearing, then they would either agree with me or help me fix the sentence they were trying to
Mm-hmm.
share. So then what do you do with that information? Well, design thinking has helped me use a series of methods to make a product that is better for the human. And so
Yeah.
the thing I would leave with everybody listening is design thinking is really human-centered design.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you for sharing that. Now, I want to ask you, let's say you're about to work with a new client. What do you hope to achieve before working or starting this particular project, if you would like to say that project with a new person?
Well, you know, I try not to go into anything with any expectation
Mm-hmm.
other than just to help.
Yeah.
Yes, obviously there's a monetary gain that I hope to seek,
Mm-hmm.
or that I'm hoping to achieve, as I mentioned, because of my obligations for my family.
Yeah.
But I also am open to whatever the expectations are of my client. The one
Mm-hmm.
thing I do want to leave with them, though,
Mm-hmm.
is a way to communicate better. If at the end of any project, no matter
Yeah.
what the outcome was, the one thing I would
Mm-hmm.
like to leave them with is a framework to communicate better.
Yeah. You genuinely answered the next question that I had for you. Um, but why? Okay, so let's just skip that and go into why is it important for you as not only a creator of bridges. Let's 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 get that famous. But why is it important for you that people who are who you have finished working with have that framework to communicate with? Why is that important for you?
I'm still trying to figure that out,
Mm-hmm.
honestly. But I will say I have come across a communication framework called nonviolent communication.
Mm-hmm.
It's also known as compassionate communication.
Yeah.
And what I think why I am eager to share it with others is because it's helped me,
Mm-hmm.
but I've seen it help others. But beyond that, it's giving me the language to actually speak to people and be able to give them the literal words
Mm-hmm.
in as a way to identify where communication might break down.
Yeah.
So I find that, from a philosophical level, a lot of our problems in the world today come
Mm-hmm.
from a miscommunication.
Yeah.
And that doesn't necessarily mean because of wars, although that's
Mm-hmm.
an is a component of miscommunication, but it could be as simple as building a piece of software. If
Yeah.
if we did not communicate correctly to the engineers
Mm-hmm.
what the people wanted,
Mm-hmm.
then of course the engineers are going to go and build something that's not suited. And
Yeah.
so I find communication as probably the critical component to humans interacting to solve anything. So I
Yeah.
think that's why I'm attracted to that framework.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Especially because, so as a soul coach, what I love to do is one part of my um, program, or one program that I have in mind called Kasturi, is all about communicating with yourself, because I believe that communication is important for any relationship, especially the relationship that you have with yourself, which a lot of people tend to forget a lot of times, which is like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's so important, it's so key to how we live, but people just forget all about it. It's like always for others, or how we show ourselves to others, but very less often as to how we present ourselves to our own selves. And not to
Okay.
confuse.
So
Yeah.
I have a question for you.
Yes, go for it.
So what that conversing with yourself, I like that. Now what is one tip you would like to share on how to start to have a healthy conversation with yourself? Have you thought of that yet?
Yeah, because that's something that I do share in my program, and it's as simple as going on a date with yourself. Um,
Oh,
yeah, so I recommend this to everyone that I meet, is that, you know what, take a day off, go on a date. And you know how when you are on a date with someone new, the person doesn't know that much about you, so they start with the very bare minimum. Like, they start with the basics, like, hey, what do you do, what do you like to do for your hobbies, what do you like to eat, the 20 questions of dating, basically. Kind of a situation. So to start having a healthy conversation with yourself, I think you just need to start. But don't start with the concept of this, the minute you start conversing with yourself, you'll solve this big problem that you've always had in your life. It's more about start small, and eventually with time you'll start to have long conversations with yourself, deep enough to kind of, build that intuition that a lot of people have about their life, right? Like, oh my god, should I be doing this or not? And you have an answer in your mind, and you can listen to that answer because you have conversed with yourself enough number of times to believe that answer that you're getting. So I think that would be my tip. Yeah.
yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
I wish I can go on a date by myself. Life has been so busy. I miss going
Yeah.
to the movies, going to a movie theater. That's a
Oh
date I
yes.
would love to take at the moment.
I miss genuinely, like, I used to when I used to live in my university, there was, in my room I used to do this very weird thing. I would like dim the lights, have like those fairy lights on, and I would sit down with a favorite book and just read it. Like, no disturbances, none of that things, So that is an ideal date for me with myself. But it's it's like I'm tired of sitting with myself due to the pandemic. I'm just like me and
Yeah.
my thoughts. I've had enough of them for a while. But I do want to get back into the rush and the bustling way of life, basically, so that I can go back to, when I do have like those dates with myself, it's more special and not like an enforced way of living, basically. If that makes any sense.
No, it does, because I think it's
Oh, I'm sorry.
interacting with other humans.
One second,
It's
could
kind
you
of
repeat
it's
that? There was this hiccup
yeah.
that happened. Yeah.
I was agreeing with you that in some respect,
Mhm.
being with yourself can be too much, and that having the noise of the outside world can help calm that voice down.
Yeah.
Sometimes just having random random humans
Yeah.
talking at you can help turn the volume down
Oh
inside.
yeah,
So I
for sure.
appreciate that observation.
Yeah. So tell me a bit more about the non-violent communication that you were talking about, because that sounded very interesting, and I think a lot of our listeners would love to know more about that.
Yeah, so it it's comes from the late psychologist Marshall Rosenberg, and I think the
Mm-hmm.
book was released in the 80s at some point, but it's simply called Nonviolent Communication. He has a number of books,
Mm-hmm.
but that would be the one I would suggest starting with first.
Yeah.
And simply put, what he has done is help you identify the basis of communication. In other words, why is someone communicating what they are to you? What
Mm-hmm.
is their need? And
Mm-hmm.
there's needs that we can really dive into, which I'll save for, because there's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Marshall
Mm-hmm.
Rosenberg refers to a social economist, Max Neef. I forget his first name, but you can look up Max hyphen
Mm-hmm.
Neef,
Yeah.
Neef. So what Dr. Rosenberg says is he wants to look at needs as the basis for communication. I'm trying to tell you I need something. Now, I might
Yeah.
not use that direct language, but what he's helping you do is identify, okay, what's the beginning of the communication? What's the motivator for it? Then within that, you look for not only the need, but are they making a request or
Mm-hmm.
are they making a demand? And now the distinction between those two is a request, simply put, is you as the person asking, you're okay with whatever answer. If someone says
Yeah.
yes, yay. If they say
Mm-hmm.
no, it's okay.
Yeah.
A demand, on the other hand, is you're basically not giving the other person a choice.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
That makes
so
sense.
there's a lot more nuance to nonviolent communication, but the point of the naming is that oftentimes the language we use has a violent tendency, and it doesn't mean like you're going to strike somebody,
Yeah.
but think of some language like when um, someone is sharing an idea and they'll say, oh, well, I'm going to poke holes in that idea, or I'm going to shoot down that
Mm-hmm.
idea.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that people are bad, but just if you think about that language, it has a violent tendency to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so a demand can come off as violent because you're saying you will do this for me, and you could see on my face I'm angry, or I might be expressing anger. And
Yeah.
so from there, Marshall suggests then ways to express your anger,
Mm-hmm.
because he doesn't want you to go and hide it away.
Yeah.
Unless of course you can't control it and you are going to do something that may be violent, like pause, of course, and take a moment. But
Mm-hmm.
he gives tools for people to really simply express, hey, I'm really upset right now because
Mm-hmm.
you didn't meet my need.
Yeah.
And on the flip side, he says, then you have to articulate, you have to be able to tell the other person exactly what it is you need and how they can achieve it.
Yeah.
So oftentimes we're in a relationship like, oh, you're not hanging out with me on Friday nights. We're
Yeah.
not going on a date as much as we want to.
Yeah.
Okay. So what are you expressing?
Mm-hmm.
I would like for you to spend more time with me. I would like to go on a date with you on this date. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
okay. Now it's clear what the problem is versus just being
Yeah.
upset or sad.
Yeah.
So it's been a very powerful framework for me. I don't know if it works for everybody, but I'm seeing it work in my career as well.
No, it actually seems very powerful. I did have like a very basic understanding of this, but now when you were speaking about this, I was in my mind thinking how I could implement this in a communication or conversation with myself, because a lot of times we are upset with ourselves, but we don't know how to
Mm,
release that or how to communicate that with ourselves, and that tends to come off, or sometimes when we are angry with someone else but we blast off on someone else, kind of a situation. So, and that
mm.
happens even when we are angry and depressed with our own selves, but we redirect that anger at the wrong person. So I was just thinking of that, and you guys who is listening in right now, um, really take this moment to actually read about this and see how you can implement it in your life, because I think it will be a big changer in your life, game changer basically. So yeah, awesome. I want to ask you, what were some of the obstacles that you faced during your journey as a creator, and what were some of the solutions that you came up with to overcome these obstacles?
Oh, I don't know if we have enough time. There are so many.
Maybe the big ones that made you feel like, oh my god, I want to give up this entire situation, kind of a thing.
Oh gosh, yeah, I give up a lot, but I always come back to it.
Yeah.
Um, People might say, "Oh, I have a love-hate relationship with creativity," and I can relate to that. I don't know if I hate that relationship. It's just there's times where I need to take a break, because creativity is hard work. It taps into your emotions that can be quite draining. Like you said,
Mm-hmm.
being with yourself can be draining, and creativity often requires you to be by yourself. Now,
Yeah.
now with design thinking, that if it forces you to be creative with other people.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily what I'm talking about. So for my personal
Mm-hmm.
journey, I think the biggest thing I struggled with is just having the language
Mm-hmm.
to express what it is I want to share with the world in a creative way.
Mm-hmm.
I've spent time went to university to study film production, and there I just struggled to share my story. Did I want to write? Did I want to be a director and put a big image up on the screen?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, did I want to just edit? Meaning, do I want to just take someone else's story and tweak it into my own way? So, just to give you those tangible mediums to work in, that's where I really struggled to express myself. Now, how I
Mm-hmm.
solved it, you just keep doing it. Like I would kept writing. I kept making silly little movies
Mm-hmm.
on my camera, or my iPhone,
Mm-hmm.
or I would take. There was a time there where I would take movies like off YouTube, like scenes from a movie off of YouTube, and I would just edit them the way I thought they should be. Not to make any money or to do anything nefarious with the content, but just to practice.
Yeah.
And so I just found that that's the thing that kept me going, is like, I just got to keep doing it, even though if it's not great or if I'm not expressing myself the way I want to.
Mm-hmm.
Sticking to the craft was important to me.
So from what you just said, one kind of sentence resonated in my mind, and that was that you love to share your perspective, if not with the world, at least you want to be able to create your own perspective. And is
Yes.
that right for me to say?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the point I would make about that is, um, not to be egotistical, but sometimes you just need to write things down or say it out loud,
Yeah.
articulate it in some form, so then you can have clarity.
Yeah.
Because even when what you say, sometimes you say things that don't make any sense,
Yeah.
but you have to get them
Yeah.
out in order to put a mirror to it and say, oh, that doesn't make sense. I actually meant this.
Yeah.
So going through that self exercise has been so helpful to me,
Yeah.
because I look at some of my old writing, or drawings, or whatever I did, like, oh man, what was I thinking there?
Oh God, yeah, I've been there. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there's usually something. There's like one or two
Hmm.
things where you were moving in the right direction.
Yeah, basically like a shining beam of sunshine through all the cringe. Because I've been there. Like I go through some of my old writings and I'm just like, my God, why? But like, on the offhand, I also know that that was important for me to reach where I am now.
Mhm.
In terms of what I'm creating now, it wouldn't have been possible if I wasn't doing the cringy things 7 years or 8 years down the line. Like,
Yeah.
seriously, I'd be like, I would be making those mistakes right now. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah.
that's the kind of thinking I implement there, because at least I did it then and not now.
Well, and it's interesting because it's something I've been thinking about a lot lately, which is, let me bear with me a moment.
Hmm.
So that creative journey, that creative process, you're still going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
They, but you probably are going to be able to fix them a little bit faster because you've had all of that
Yeah.
repetition. But I was listening to a podcast recently that was trying to emphasize the importance of that creative process, which is, this individual used the example. Um, oh gosh, I'm gonna forget the name. Um, Archimedes. So
Hmm.
the Archimedes principle about
Yeah.
water
Yeah.
displacement,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so um, everyone in the scientific community goes, well, you place an object in this amount of water, and then whatever amount of water is off to the side and displaced, then that what the volume of the water is. And they talk more about the proof points.
Hmm.
What they don't seem to really care about is that the only reason Archimedes came to that process is accidentally sitting in the tub.
Hmm.
Well, he didn't accidentally sit in the tub, but he was sitting, he was, you know, putting himself in the tub, and he noticed the water rise, and that synapses, that creative
Hmm.
process was kicked off. So just a simple act of getting into the tub, or stubbing your toe, or climbing a ladder, can trigger that creative process that leads you to the final outcome. And
Yeah.
so the podcast guest this person was expressing was something I resonated with. It's like you just have to get the messy, what do
Mhm.
you call it, the cringy parts.
Yeah. Yeah, that's for sure. Something that I resonated with, even with what you were saying earlier, is sometimes it's important to get it out of your system, right? And that's what
Yeah.
journaling does, because that's what I connected it with, is like when we are journaling, we are putting all our emotions out there, and then there's like a beam of clarity that just hits us, and we are like, ah, that was what I was feeling. Like, I think it helps us kind of, when you empty out your mind on a piece of paper, then you can like dig deep, and you actually realize what was the thing that was hurting you, what was the thing that was your pain point, basically. So I resonated with that, and I think it will connect very well to the next question that I have for you, which is, as this is a spiritual podcast, I think it would be awesome to know if you have any spiritual or self-care routines in your work life as well as in your personal life.
Hmm. Yes. I've had a battle with spirituality,
Mm-hmm.
um, because of my exposure to certain churches and religious beliefs. So I won't talk too much about that. But I do practice mindfulness meditation. I do breathing techniques
Mm-hmm.
specifically. Um, I try to really use that approach in meditation, to calm the noise
Mm-hmm.
and be present in the moment. Um, you know, I I know that the meditation, I don't know if he's a what the title is not quite guru, but
Mm-hmm.
Thich Nhat Hanh has said,
Mm-hmm.
look, meditation is not for you to escape your problems. It's to be able to look at them
Mm-hmm.
and create an approach on how
Yeah.
to work on them.
Yeah.
And that's helped me. Now that wasn't his direct quote, but that was it,
Yeah.
the spirit in which it was intended, which is a lot of people think about meditation as like, oh, you just want to wipe away your problems. Like, no, I
No,
just don't
no.
want a lot of noise and
Yeah.
anger and frustration. I want to be able to look at it, pull it out of my brain and hold it like a box and be able to
Mm-hmm.
examine it and go, okay, I got to fix this and I got to fix that and then
Yeah.
keep going.
Yeah. To
So
be
it's
with
still
it.
a struggle. Yeah, to be with
Yeah.
it, but it's a struggle because I have monkey mind.
Yeah. No, that was beautiful. I wanna ask you, what was one of your soul's conquest, and what is shaping up to be your current soul's conquest?
Well, help me define a soul conquest. How does that relate to your audience? Help define that for me.
So for me, I think when I think of a soul's conquest, it's kind of like a side quest. It's like when you're playing a video game, you have a main quest, but you also have these side quests to kind of gather things on your way that will eventually help your main quest, that is life. So I think
I
of it like that, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think it comes back to what meditation's helping me is, I have to I think this is more than just a side quest though. I think this is a
Mm-hmm.
big soul quest, which is I need to get to my self actualization.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a firm believer, if I'm not happy with myself, I can't be happy to others.
Yeah.
And I have to work on that.
Yeah.
Uh, I stumble
Mm-hmm.
and I try to make good with others if I upset them or hurt their feelings.
Yeah.
But that's a big journey for me is, I got to be comfortable with myself in order to help others.
That makes a lot of sense. I'm glad that you are on that journey, and are taking the steps to reach the destination that you want to reach. Um, Now, what is the one thing that has happened in your life recently that has created an impact?
That has created which,
An impact, yeah.
um well, one thing is meeting someone like yourself.
Oh. Yeah.
has been impactful. It makes me feel good that I was able to connect with another human being on the other side of the world.
Yeah.
That's pretty powerful, wouldn't you think?
It is very powerful. Yeah. Because
Uh,
I got a lot of things from you, from whenever I speak with you, in the conversation that we had before this, it was really powerful because I did not know about Tigna Mahan. I'm sorry if I'm butchering that name. I'm so sorry. I'm
oh
really
no.
bad with names. Um, but yeah, like those were some of the conversations. I feel like conversations and stories are powerful, and yours is really powerful. So yeah.
Yeah, I guess what more closely to home, I've been pretty grateful that my um, brother-in-law was here helping me build my children a treehouse. So
Yeah.
that's been very, very impactful. That I will share.
Yeah, that I have seen the updates and it's awesome. So you guys should check out his Instagram because it's so cool to see that progress. One last question for you, and that is, what is the one last thing that you would like to leave my listeners with?
Yeah, I even if you don't pick up the book from Marshall Rosenberg, Nonviolent Communication, I want to encourage people to really start to think about how to improve their
Hmm.
communication, um, to get what you need,
Yeah.
within reason. Like, obviously, I don't want you to go out and hurt people
Hmm.
or be mean, but I find that the power of communication has been so helpful. Throughout my life, I've been afraid to ask for things,
Hmm.
and people would tell me, "Oh, what's the worst could happen?" They say no. Okay, well then that's a good reflection on me. Maybe I'm making demands of people. I wasn't really asking them.
Yeah.
So that's been my journey, and I'd like to share it with others, and hopefully they can apply it in their life as well.
That was beautiful. Your journey is so powerful. I hope that whoever listens to this actually gains some insights and implement some of the things that you said, much like the nonviolent communication part of it. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for
Of course.
sharing your story. So glad that we had this opportunity to speak with you.
Oh, it's my pleasure, and I appreciate the invite.
Awesome. See you soon.